You're listening to the Holistic Health Front podcast.
Whether you've already taken steps towards a healthier life,
or you're just starting to explore this path,
this podcast aims to help all of us live longer and more energized lives,
so we can all do the things we want and be the person we know we can be.
We bring on functional health experts, parents, professionals, and everyday people who want to make positive changes in their lives.
And we create powerful conversations about how to feel good in a fun, easy, and understandable way,
so you can live the most fulfilling life possible.
Enjoy today's discussion and let us hear your thoughts in our Powerful People Facebook group.
The information presented in this podcast is not meant to diagnose, treat, cure, prevent, or mitigate any disease.
If you have any questions about your health or the health of a loved one, please consult your healthcare practitioner.
Now let's begin.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Holistic Health Front podcast. That feels good to say because it's been a while since I've actually done the intro for a podcast, so that feels really cool to say again. We're here as usual. We're here as always with our Holistic Health Front. Today we've got Coach Shannon. Hey, Shannon.
Hey, how's it going?
And we've got Coach Trevonne. Hey, Trevonne.
Hi, everyone.
All right, and today we're talking about imposter syndrome in this episode. And imposter syndrome, I've found that, I've been in the personal development crowds for many years now, and it's becoming quite a buzzword in our crowds, right? I feel like a lot of people have an idea of what imposter syndrome means, or they've heard it before, or they've used it, but they've used the phrase imposter syndrome, but haven't really felt into what that is to them. So today we're just going to have a little conversation and open it up because, I truly believe that, one, that imposter syndrome can really keep us from living the life we truly want to live. And I think it's a shame that so many people, myself included for the longest time, are not living the life that they truly want because they feel like they're either not worthy of it, or they're not good enough for it, or they're just not that person. So, but I really also believe that if we can talk about these things in a supportive group, like the group we have, we're the Holistic Health Front. We have each other's backs. We also have our Powerful People community where everybody, you, the listener of this podcast, and our coaches and everybody can interact with each other. And I think that if we can shed light to these feelings that we have, and that's keeping us from doing the things we want, and even more than that is if we can just, with bravery, with courage, say what we truly want in our life. If we can say that out loud with a group of people who are there to empower us and lift us up and just have our best interests at heart, it really allows us to break through those things that we call, quote unquote, imposter syndrome. All right. And a lot of times we call imposter syndrome anything that just keeps us from doing what we truly want. Right. But I know, Shannon, when we got on, you actually looked up the actual definition of imposter syndrome. Do you mind telling us what that is? Because actually, I've literally never looked it up before. I've just always used the word willy-nilly, and that's it,
Yeah, no problem. So what the almighty knowing Google has said is it's an uncomfortable feeling you experience when you think you're unqualified and incompetent. And I like that one the best. It was very straightforward, and it didn't leave much up to the imagination. I know I've definitely felt it quite a bit, and I think it's very common, especially for new business owners and small business owners. Their first go around, there's a lot to learn. There's a huge learning curve.
Gotcha. And what are some ways that imposter syndrome could show up in our lives? For me, I think a lot of times I've traded the thing that I really want to do for the thing that I feel is logical. Like, oh, this is the safe thing, or this is what I should do, when my heart really wanted something else. And one, I'll say that every time I've done that, it's never worked out the best to my ability, right? And every time I do follow my heart, it just works out somehow. And I can tell you the moment before it works out, I have no idea how it's going to work out, but then it does. So, for me, a lot of times it shows up in my life by just not acknowledging what I truly want, not even really being willing to say it to myself inside my own head, what I really want. So what are some other ways that it shows up in people's lives? Trevonne, Coach Shannon, for the two of you, what ways have you seen or experienced?
A very similar.
Go ahead.
Trevonne.
Here we go. Okay. Yeah, for me, I find it typically comes up in when you're trying to do something new. So whether that's you're doing like a career change or you have this idea that you want to do something comes to your heart that you want to do. And like you said, you're not sure how it's going to work out. I find that it comes in those situations, but specifically for me, like when I switched my career to be a health coach, it showed up in ways like I feel like I'm not experienced enough, or there are people who know more than me. Can I even say that I'm a health coach when I literally just went through this training and haven't had any official clients as yet? So like that's what it has looked like for me most recently.
Yeah, I've had that same, like those similar thoughts go through my head, especially like specifically with being a health coach. And then I remind myself that, like, come on, I've been health coaching people my whole, like, for as long as I can remember, just because I did the course a couple of years ago,
Right.
but yeah, thanks for sharing that, because I think a lot of us can relate, especially in our health coach group that we have. A lot of us are kind of newly certified, even though we have a lot of experience under our belts unofficially. Shannon, what about you? How does it show up in you? How has it shown up in your life or in somebody that you know, or ways that
I
you've seen?
think it's shown up a few times where I just forced myself to fake it until I made it. Left St. Louis and was just trying to fake it till I made it in a new city, feeling very alone and trying to be strong, and especially strong for my family. They wouldn't freak out. So I definitely felt like an imposter when inside I was just like, what did I do? That one was hard, and now I got the hang of it. Starting a business. I agree, coaching, completely changing my career while I've dabbled in it in other jobs from different perspectives. Starting my own business and not being a CPA, not being a tax accountant, not being an IT guru by any stretch of the imagination. There's so many unknowns to running a business, and I'm like, and now I'm a business owner. That has been mind-blowing and terrifying and exciting and terrifying all at the same time. Definitely the part where unqualified and incompetent has definitely highlighted when trying to figure out all of the IT that goes on in the background behind running a coaching business and making sure that everything is HIPAA compliant and, that your system doesn't get hacked and everybody's information stays safe. It is incredibly overwhelming. And, I don't want to mess around and find out the hard way, even though sometimes those lessons are learned quickly and learned well. It could cost me so much. And that's, Tyler, you mentioned doing something because it's logical instead of following your heart. Just the risk of being a business owner, dealing with somebody's health is super high risk. And there's been plenty of times when I'm like, no. Do this because it's just too high. The risk is just so terrifying high. But then to your point as well, when something is put on your heart, what kind of disservice am I doing to myself and to others by not pursuing that, not following that? So It has been interesting.
Yeah. And for those of you listening, like, there's a real powerful reason why we're sharing these experiences that we've had and why we're talking about our own personal stories. And I kind of alluded to it in the beginning, and we'll talk about it more. But really quick, just like some more ways that it could show up, because I know maybe not everybody listening is a health coach and not everybody listening is a business owner. We here on this call, on this interview, can like really relate to each other in that way, because we're all just like, yeah, there's a lot that goes into this, and not even like just from a technical standpoint, from the mental, emotional standpoint, from the spiritual standpoint, all of the above. There's so much that goes into it. But some other ways that it might, Shannon put together an awesome list of some other ways that it might show up in our life, from like self-doubt despite achievements. I heard this when we're talking about, I just became certified as a health coach. And so I don't know, it's hard for me to call myself a health coach. And by just, it's been a couple of years now, hasn't it? Like, haven't we been health coaches for a couple of years now?
We have.
Like certified, I mean, but even before that, it's easy to overlook all the interests and all the studying that we put into health coaching. Even if we didn't call it health coaching before, all the years of our friends coming to us because we're the ones that took the time to read into things or learn how to do things or experiment with our own health. It's easy to overlook those things, but those achievements and still have that self-doubt. Like that's an example of imposter syndrome. Attributing success to luck. I've definitely done that before. Or like, no, it wasn't that big of a deal. I just got lucky. It's like, no, toot your horn. It's okay. Like, it's okay to own your greatness at times, and you don't have to call it greatness. Like I know sometimes greatness is just showing up for work that day and just doing like the core things that need to be done. Right. I'm a sports fan and I've been watching a lot of baseball lately because my Cleveland Guardians are doing really well. But like some of the best players in the entire world, they'll come up to play a game. Like they'll enter a game and they'll go to the plate 3 or 4 times and not get a single hit in an entire game. Or they'll go an entire series and only have like 1 hit out of like 21 at bats or something like that or whatever. But every time they continue to come up to that plate and they continue to battle and they continue to fight and they find ways to impact despite the fact that they're not hitting the ball that day or whatever. And to me, like that's overcoming imposter syndrome. That's not letting the imposter syndrome kick in. And they're still considered the best in the world, even though in 21 at bats, they've only gotten 3 hits. They're considered the best in the world at that, right? It's because they take that loss and they go sit on the bench for a second, they regather themselves, and then they go step back up to the plate again with this confidence in their mind that I'm going to hit the ball this time, right? And I think that's like it's a analogy or metaphor. I've always gotten those two things mixed up. But it works with the other parts of our life, right? Like if we have a bad day at work, or if we get in an argument with our partner, or if our kids just aren't listening to us, or whatever it is, like whatever our benchmarks are in our life that we measure for success, if it's just not going right that day, what we have the ability to do is regroup and reframe that situation, get like new perspective on it, and then come back the next day or come back the next hour or whatever it is and bring the best we've got that day. Cause that's what, to me, like that's what it's all about, is continuing to step back up to the plate. This episode is brought to you by oxygen and carbon dioxide. Breathe deep, breathe slow. Are you tired of nagging headaches, body pains, and feeling like you've been steamrolled by 2 p.m.? Ugh. Want to feel more alive with a clearer mind, voice, and skin?
Yep. And
not to mention getting rid of that pesky BO when the deodorant starts to wear off?
Ew.
Introducing to you today, water. Did you know that 75% of American adults are chronically dehydrated? And did you know that majority of people who are dehydrated think that they actually are hydrated? That means most people are not drinking enough water. But if they did, and they realized how much of a massive difference it makes in how they feel to be hydrated, they would realize that water can change their life. So drink more water. Aim for 96 fluid ounces per day minimum for adults. Side effects include peeing more often the first couple of weeks, but don't worry, it will slow down soon. I know I should really drink less caffeine. I just wish there was some way of getting energy in the morning without a coffee. The sun! Wait a minute. I feel good. Especially when I close my eyes and stare at the sun through my eyelids. Wow, this is great. I think I'm ready to crush this day now. Thanks, sun. The sun. Use it for free with care. Hey y'all, hope you've enjoyed these goofy little commercials. The information is all accurate and valid, so please use the tips we shared. Even though we're having fun and being silly recording them, they're still 100% meant to support you and entertain you. We'll be getting back to the show in just a minute, but first, I want to really encourage you to join our free community on Facebook. It's called the Powerful People Community, and it's a place where you can interact with other listeners of the show, including me, our other coaches and co-hosts and everybody. And it's a place where you can ask questions publicly or anonymously. You can request episode topics, you can share your story, and celebrate with a group of really amazing people who will also be celebrating you. So we really hope to see you in the community. We think we're building something really special because we believe when you bring together a group of powerful people, there's just so many great things we can do in this world, more than we could do on our own. So we're building a special community, and we hope to talk to you there soon. Now, let's get back to the show. I'm curious, for those of you listening to this episode, we do our communication in the Powerful People Facebook group, Powerful People Community Facebook group. I'd love to hear from you what you consider to be imposter syndrome and what helps you to do the things that you really want to do or that you know you need to do, despite the way despite how you might be feeling that day, right? And it's okay if it's just the bare minimum, but yeah, I want to hear your perspective of what helps you use imposter syndrome to your advantage. And Trevonne, your lights look like, I don't know what's going on over there.
My goodness, I'm sorry. I'm going to turn off the camera.
I don't know if you've ever seen Stranger Things, but it's giving me some Stranger Things vibes. You have a storm. You've got a storm going on, right?
Yeah. So
it's all right. It's okay. For those of you only listening, Trevonne's lights in her room turned into strobes, and it was like almost like the club for a second there. Cool. Yeah. I feel like I've been kind of on the tangent here for a second. Any other thoughts when it comes to how imposter syndrome shows up in our life and how like that relationship is between us and imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I'd like to speak to it a little bit more. Another one on the list is the fear of being found out. I had this happen so much in a previous position. I had to talk to doctors regularly, and not as much as the sales people, but enough that I was a nervous wreck to reach out to any of the doctors and talk about the products, talk about the supplements, because I had a business degree in international business. Not in supplements, not chemistry, biology, not health related at all. So everything I learned was from that company on the fly and on my own. And, to go up and have a intelligent conversation with these folks in a field that they'd been working in their whole life and went to school for was just incredibly intimidating. And I did not talk about my background because I didn't want to be found out, right? I just more or less stuck to the script and did what I could to, hold on and answer their questions. And I worked with a really good group of people who were able to support. So if I did have questions, I could either transfer the call or shoot them a quick email or message on Teams or something to get some help. But nonetheless, fear of being found out was very prevalent. I'm understanding of that.
The next one on the list I can completely relate to: overworking to compensate. This is something that I'm really trying to understand myself better, but like it's this feeling of if I'm not, like, for example, and overworking can mean a lot of different things, right? There's working a lot in our jobs, being kind of a workaholic, which I have a lot of that too. I work from home, so my computer is always here, and I've got a lot of big projects and a lot of big goals. So there's just an endless list of things that could be done. I could work around the clock every day if I like. A lot of times I do want to, but I have to put some boundaries on it. But other ways to think about it too, overworking is like when I go to the gym or when I go play basketball, I can't not go 110%. I don't know how to just. Let me reframe this too. I've recently learned how to not turn it down a notch, especially more so at the gym, because I've learned recently that like going as hard as you can in the gym every time is not healthy and it's not conducive to any health goals at all, including fitness goals. So I have learned how to tone it down, but I have like in the past gone too hard at the gym, like way above my level to try to like prove something either to myself or to other people. And it never worked out to my advantage. And I had another example I'm not thinking of right now, overworking, but
I have a couple, if I may.
Yeah.
Okay. When I moved to Houston, I took a job with an employer where my dad worked from for 20 years and did incredibly well. Part of his retirement was being roasted. And I mean, who does that anymore? Right? So that should tell you like how much they respected him and enjoyed working with him and things of that sort. So I had that. And then most of the people I worked with were men. There was a very physical part of the job. And then I eventually was promoted to the office. But even in the office, I was the only female. So I was surrounded by men and some who were incredibly intelligent and were able to see systems like nobody's business. And I had to keep up. So most of my days were minimum 12, on average, probably 16 though. Just trying to keep up to make sure that everybody knew that I was dedicated like my dad, and I was intelligent like my dad, and I was professional and earned the respect like my dad as well. And I burnt myself all the way out trying to keep up with all of that and did not have healthy boundaries, which is another conversation for another podcast that contributed to my burnout. So I know that overworking to compensate, especially from a female's perspective, is pretty common for us.
I see. Again, there's a very important reason why we're talking through these like this and kind of sharing our own experiences, and we're going to get to that. Just want to create an open loop so you keep listening longer. And get through the list, talk through these things. So, Trevonne, I just want to make sure, can you still hear us?
Yes, I can. My electricity definitely did go. But we have solar and it can only take so much. So that's why I like to do that. So definitely what y'all are talking about resonates with me, the overworking yourself to overcompensate. That definitely has happened a lot throughout my career. And a thing that I wanted to add to that contributes to the imposter syndrome is perfectionism. And I know a lot of people have that same, I guess, self-limitation with wanting to be perfect, right? And I think that contributes a lot to feelings of imposter syndrome as well. Another thing too is comparing yourself to others, right? Because if you weren't comparing yourself to others, then you wouldn't really have to feel like you're an imposter.
Yeah, right? Like, what are you an imposter compared to, right? And what are the standards that you're holding yourself to? And are those realistic standards in reality?
Exactly.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. I mean, growing up playing baseball, like I would put so much pressure on myself. I would literally compare myself to professional baseball players and expect that of myself. And when I didn't do it, like I would get really down on myself. And I think that's something that a lot of times, a lot of people do. And to this day, I still catch myself doing it sometimes, is comparing our before state to somebody else's after state. Mm-hmm. And if we could just see, if we're going to play the comparison game, which for humans, like with the way the brain works, it's kind of hard not to play the comparison game. Like it just kind of naturally happens, right? But at least let's make sure that we're picking somebody that's like, we're picking things to compare ourselves to that's like at the level that we're at, right? Or slightly ahead of the level we're at. But if we're middle school baseball and we're comparing ourselves to the big leaguers, it's like, it's not realistic expectations. And the same with a lot of different areas of our life. Like I have friends that, a friend of mine just got a new job and he's working this job, and he told me that he just feels really, I mean, just to be blunt and tell you, I'm not going to tell you what his name is, but just to be blunt and tell you exactly what he said. He said, I feel really stupid at my job. Like I feel incredibly dumb. I was like, why do you feel that way? Or what do you think is causing you to feel that way? And he said, because these other people that work there, they're so much faster than me. They're looking at me like they're impatient with me, and I'm getting frustrated. And that's just like another example. And he knows it's okay to feel these things. But he knows that he's comparing himself, the new employee, to the people who have been working there for several years. And probably those same people didn't, these same people probably looked the same way he did when they first started. So at any area of our life, I don't know why I'm having a hard time speaking right now. In any area of our life, we could be doing this comparison game. And the idea is just to be mindful of who we're comparing ourselves to and how much of their life are we actually seeing, or like how much of the work that got them to that point have we seen. So yeah, great point about doing the comparison game, right? Another thing on the list is discounting praise. Like if somebody gives you a compliment, just not accepting it, not like almost kind of disagreeing with them. I've seen that happen quite a bit where like, and I've been on that end of it quite a bit where somebody tells me a compliment and I'm like, no, it's not true, which, you know, I know a lot of times when people discount praise, they're doing it from their own perspective. But like, if you get out of yourself a little bit and get a different perspective, I was putting that person's compliment down, you know, which is kind of like if somebody gives a compliment and they mean it from their heart and then they're just like told, no, you're wrong, that hurts too, right? So not only were we hurting ourselves, but we're unintentionally kind of putting somebody else down in that sense, right? Like, so that's one thing that I've had to learn to do. And it's one thing that in some personal development groups, we have to practice is taking compliments and not feeling like we have to validate it or correct it or anything like that. And it's a really good practice too. So that's something we can start doing in our day-to-day lives is just, if we hear a compliment and our first instinct, just become aware of what our first instinct is when we hear that compliment and try to just put a little bit of wedge of time between when the compliment is received and how we respond to it. And a lot of times the best way to respond to it is just put your hands on your heart and say, thank you so much. Shannon, were you going to say something?
Yes. I kind of wish that Courtney were here to add to this piece right here. But I just wanted to speak a little bit to the energy of this that you were alluding to. When we give praise, when we give a compliment, we are sharing our light, we're sharing our love, we're sharing our positivity, and with the hope and the expectation that the person is going to receive it. And if you discount it, like Tyler was saying, you're chopping it off. You're stopping that flow. And of course, the person giving it, it's up to them on how they react, right? Their reaction is not under your control. But why would you want to stop a good flow? So like Tyler was saying, I love that, to give pause, give a breath, take a breath, even breathe in to receive. Hand on your heart, if possible, if applicable, and give the good light back, give the good energy back with a thank you. So I just wanted to give voice to that exchange of positivity, exchange of good mojo, happy vibes, sure. All the good things.
And if we cut down somebody's compliment, then they might be less likely to give a compliment again in the future. And, you know, I don't know if anybody's ever seen those studies with plants where like they put two of the same plants in different rooms, and one plant they always just give compliments to and say, they love you, I love you, I love you, you're amazing. And then another plant, they always say, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you, you suck. And the plants like have drastically different life, like vibrancy in their life. So, you know, even if you don't believe the compliment that's given to you, the more you receive it and the more you hear it, the more your subconscious starts to accept it and you start to kind of embody that. So like, even if you don't feel it, this is kind of like the way that I think of using imposter syndrome to our advantage as like I guess a tool you could say is imposter syndrome can work the other way too, where we just kind of keep repeating something to ourselves or keep like holding a belief, even if we believe it's not true. But the more we can kind of keep holding on to that, the more that our subconscious can kind of assimilate to that thought and kind of just become that, right? So almost like fake it until you make it, kind of, except fake it and then work really, really, really hard consistently over and over again until you make it, right? Yeah, that's kind of the thought process there. So we have 15 minutes left in this episode. So I know Trevonne has a few ideas that we can talk through of how we can, like what we can do when we start to feel that imposter syndrome and like how we can navigate through that in order to continue to move forward towards what we really want. Just really quick before we get there, I've been kind of teasing this idea of like, hey, we're having these conversations for a very intentional, specific reason, and it's really important and powerful. And it's because we can talk about these things. If we can kind of talk about what we notice in ourselves, like, hey, this is what I've been thinking about it. I've been meditating on it. This is what I really want. I really want this. And if you can't see, I'm just holding up my hand to represent what this is. This is whatever you want it to be. I really want this. If you can communicate this to somebody, this is what I really want, but I'm afraid, or I'm blank. And it's because I think this. I think that I'm not good enough for this, or nobody's going to want to pay me to do this, or whatever it is, right? If we can talk about these things in a group of people, one, it gets that energy out of us. So now we're not holding that inside of ourselves anymore. But it allows us to kind of separate us from the imposter syndrome, because we're not the imposter syndrome, right? If we can point our finger at something and say, hey, that's what that is over there. This is that. Now we can separate ourselves from it. And now we can we can kind of put a wedge between these two ideas. And now we're no longer the same, right? So if we can bring to the table, hey, I really want to be a health coach who's able to impact a lot of people to live longer, but more energized lives. I really that's what I'm called to do. I'm creating this podcast because I want to create a safe space where we can have conversations and we can support each other and we can grow together. And I believe that for the next generation, we can create a net positive for everybody in the way that we think about life and the way that we think about each other and how we support each other. This is what I really want to do, but I'm scared because I haven't quite figured out how to say that. I haven't figured out quite how to communicate that to the world. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to figure out how to communicate that to the world. And I've never done this before. So I don't know what this path is in front of me. I'm actually really scared. But we're doing this podcast so that we can practice getting the reps and figure out how we want to communicate things and find ways that we can impact people right now where we're currently at, while also building a future together with a group of coaches. And the group of coaches just happen to gravitate towards that vision too, because, well, we're communicating, right? And by communicating, you're inviting other people in on your journey as well. And the right people are going to go with you on that journey and help push it forward, despite the imposter syndrome. And us together as a group, we can continue to push forward towards what we really want while being able to point at the imposter syndrome over there, because it's not in here. It's not in us. I'm pointing at myself. No, it's not in us. The imposter syndrome is over there. All three of us on this call right now, we can look at the imposter syndrome and say like, hey, that's the imposter syndrome. That's what it looks like. That's how it shows up in our life. That's what that is. But we're going to continue on our path going forward, doing what we are meant to do, right? Listening to our hearts and creating our vision, despite how scary it feels. So that's kind of why this is such a powerful thing to do, to be able to talk about the feelings that we have around imposter syndrome, and then also be very honest and talk about the things that we truly actually want in our life, even if it feels scary to say. Shannon, were you going to say something?
But I think it's going to lead better into what Trevonne is going to bring up about overcoming it. And I'm hoping that one of her ways of overcoming it is really digging into your why. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Trevonne.
Just a heads up, I have to jump in 11 minutes. I had to do some quick math there in my head. So yeah, just want to have that context there.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so I love that you mentioned acknowledging your feelings, because definitely that should actually be the first step. And so I have 3 other ideas. The first one is to look at how far you've come. The second one is to celebrate your wins. And the third one is to remember that you are here for a reason, to follow what comes to your heart.
That's great. I love how actionable those are, right? Like right now, I challenge everybody, all of us on this call, everybody listening to this, to go in the Powerful People community and make a post with your win of the day or of the week or of the month or whatever. It doesn't matter. Post a win that's happened within the past month. And the win can be as big as I got a new client for my health coaching business, to I ate breakfast today, right? And I didn't feel like it, but I did, right? So like a win doesn't have to be big. It can be small, but that's a very actionable thing we can do. And actually I used to be a part of it was a business mastermind, but it was very much focused on personal development as well. And it was a requirement in the group that every single day we had Slack at the time. We would go into our Slack channel, and every single day we had to post a win from that day, no matter what, no matter how big or small. And you could just see like how it challenged everybody in the group, but then how like we all rallied around each other by acknowledging something that we did. And you would be shocked at how many people will literally cheer you on because you said, I got out of bed today when my alarm clock rang and I hated it. I didn't want to, but I did. And it's like,
yes, instead of hitting the snooze button.
Right? It's like, no, I didn't save the world today. I got out of bed. And everybody's going to be like, yes, woo, right? So you're shocked.
Yeah.
So that's my challenge. And I'm going to do it. Not directly after we get off of this. Actually, all right. This will be the challenge the day that this episode is released. So got a little bit of time here, but that's our challenge going forward is like, can we share our wins on a daily basis to start to reduce the amount of power that imposter syndrome has over us? Right. Cool. Any other thoughts or anything that we should bring up on this call before it's over?
I'm really excited to get the conversation going on our Facebook group, because I think even sharing our wins there and being able to celebrate that is amazing beyond imposter syndrome. It's awesome for a little dopamine hit, right? It's awesome for depression, anxiety. So many little things, big things, happen when we celebrate the wins on a regular basis. So I'm really excited about that.
Too. Trevonne, anything for you?
Yeah, no, I think my last thought would really be that things like imposter syndrome are really around us focusing on thoughts and ideas and beliefs that don't serve us. And those 3 ideas that we just listed, those are the opposite of that, right? So it helps you to focus on things that do serve you, right? The things that keep your mind in the emotions that elevate us, right? The joy, the gratitude. Yeah. So that's why those 3 ideas are so powerful, is that it takes us out of that spiral, right? That, I don't want to say the word negative, but the spiral of thoughts that don't serve you.
And one more time, could you list those 3 things one more time?
Yeah. So look at how far you've come. So that takes reflection, right? Like if you think about it, we are where we once wish we were, right? But the way that our minds work, we never truly feel like, we always want to grasp for the next thing, right? We always want to grasp for that next thing. So looking at how far you've come, whether that's like picking up the practice of journaling so that you can always look back to where you were like months ago or years ago or whatever, that's one way to do it. Celebrating your wins. And we talked about that. And it could be a little thing, like make it a practice where you do it maybe once a week or whatever works for you, right? Just celebrate your wins, celebrate the littlest thing. And remember that we are all here for a reason. You are here for a reason. Nothing would be put on your heart if you weren't meant to go after it. So don't let your thoughts, that self-doubt, that imposter syndrome, those limiting beliefs, don't let them stop you from being who you were sent here to be.
Incredibly powerful. Yeah. So thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Really, 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 I really encourage us to bring these conversations into the community. Share. I know it's scary to share parts of ourselves, especially when we can't really see the faces of the people on the other side of that community, which one day I really would love to host like an in-person event for our community. But for now,
amazing.
For now, we're using the tools that we have available to us. We've chosen Facebook for now for the community. And I know it can be scary, but just trust me. I know it's hard to trust somebody that you're only hearing on the internet too, but we don't let people in the group that aren't like a part of this vision of just being fully loving and supportive of each other. And that's just how everybody is in that community. I've literally gotten on a call. I can't say everybody anymore, but I'll say this. I've gotten on a call with 98% of the people in that group and like had real deep one-on-one conversations with every single person in that group. So we're in good hands here. It's a safe space, and we're all just fully committed to supporting each other. And I really highly encourage us to bring to that community our wins, to share the things that we truly want, even if we've never told anybody else in our real day-to-day life. The nice thing about sharing that with people on the internet who don't fully know you completely is that we will immediately see you as that. So you can tell us how to see you, and then we can start to just hold you in that space, right? Whereas the people in your day-to-day life, you got to kind of convince them a little bit, right? Like, I swear I'm the health coach, right? with everybody here, they're just like, Tyler's a health coach. And the people in my life, I'm like, yeah, but no, I studied this. So that's a nice thing about sharing these kinds of things in the community. And just like, let us know, like, what are the things that you truly want? Who do you really want to be? What do you really want in your life? And what are some of the fears or some of the buts that come up in your life that kind of pop up when you think of those things, right? And if you share that publicly, it takes that out of you, and now we can all like observe this thing together that's not you, right? And holds you to who you truly are, which is a superstar in your own way, right? Thank you so much for listening to the Holistic Health Front podcast. If you liked this, please make sure you subscribe and download your favorite episodes. Leave us a review. We're always appreciative and always want to hear your thoughts about, what are we doing well? What can we do better? What would you like to hear about in the future? And we'll see you in the Powerful People community. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.